A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad that you have joined us today. And by us, I mean myself and Phillip Van Cleave of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, who's going to be joining me in just a matter of moments. We had another legislative hearing in Virginia today, the Senate Judiciary Committee taking up a number of gun control bills that had been passed out of the House of Delegates in Virginia. Now, listen, we've got about 2 weeks left in the legislative session. March the 7th, that is when the session is slated to conclude, and so it's getting towards crunch time here. We've seen most of these gun control bills have crossed out of their house of origin. They're now over on the other side, but as Phil Van Cleave points out, there are a number of differences between the House versions and the Senate versions of many of these gun control measures, whether it's one gun a month, whether it's lost or stolen, that died. So local control, minors having access to firearms, all of these are still being debated and worked out and discussed, but there are still some differences between what the House has passed, what the Senate has passed, and Lord only knows what the final version of these bills are going to look like. Take a look and a listen, though, to Phil Van Cleave, who breaks down what happened today in the Senate Judiciary Committee there in Richmond, Virginia. Phil, thanks so much for coming on the program, sir. I appreciate your time today.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
So we saw the Senate Judiciary Committee take up a number of these gun control bills that have passed out of the House in committee today. What's the overall result? I mean, it looks like these bills, most of them are progressing in some form or fashion right now.
Yeah, they've pretty much been modified, sweetened up, if you will, to take out some of the more egregious parts. But they're still, or I should say sweeten some of them. They're still bad bills. We oppose all of them. But they have been pretty much modified. The House versions were always horrible. I mean, they were always going for the jugular, and the Senate was more moderate. And so they pretty much modified the bills to match the Senate version, and the House did the same thing with the Senate bills. So now they're going to end up clashing as to what they're going to do, because the bills, the one in the House and one in the Senate, for each of these is going to be different. So that's going to be where we really hold our breath too, is whether they can come up with a compromise. If they can't, then the bill will die. So there's still chances for these bills to die. Or if they come up with a compromise that satisfies both bodies, what is that compromise?
Yeah. And in fact, we're seeing some press reports that a compromise has been reached on the red flag bill. That came up in the Senate Judiciary Committee today. And the House version, as you noted, again, there are differences between the House version and the Senate version. The Senate version required, I believe, that there be 2 law enforcement officers investigate. They had to get approval from the Commonwealth's attorney. The House version did not contain any of those due process protections. What did the Senate Judiciary do with that House version today? Did they change it to look like their bill?
Well, it's kind of a hybrid. It's got some of the stuff in it that the Senate bill had, but it's also missing some of the stuff. So it does not have as many protections at this stage as we would, we don't want the bill at all, but yeah, they had better protections before than they do now. They had to consult, the judge had to consult with the Commonwealth's attorney before, he would issue a red flag. And so that was stripped out. And now that doesn't mean it can't be put in on the House floor. The Republicans very much wanted to see that put in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, things can happen on the House floor to correct some of this. And, the one where a child getting access to a firearm, a loaded gun left recklessly, when this bill got to the Senate, they changed that from a felony back down to a class 1 misdemeanor. So again, that was an improvement. We think the way the bill or the law was fine, but they in essence raised the penalty from a class 3 to a class 1 misdemeanor.
Okay, and they also, as I understand, lowered that age back down to 14. This had been raised up to 18. So, your 17-year-old would have been in trouble if they went hunting, or if you allowed your 17-year-old daughter access to a firearm for self-defense while she's home alone. That would not be the case under the current language that the Senate Judiciary Committee passed today.
Yeah, correct. And your accentuation on current is of course important, because that could change again on the floor. But as of right now, I think all the pressure we've been putting on has caused quite a bit of moderation. I'd like to stop more of these bills, obviously.
Yeah.
And again, there's still time, but the clock, the sand is running out of the clock there. So
yeah, because March the 7th, that's the last day of the session. I understand Governor Northam could bring folks back in if they don't get everything done in time, but that's the sort of the drop dead date right now. Let me ask you about another bill, the 1 gun a month handgun rationing bill. The House version's House Bill 812. And again, one of the big differences between the House version and the version that passed out of the Senate, the Senate version basically would bring us back to the status quo from 2004 to 2012 or something like that, I think, right? Where there's 1 gun a month, but there's an exemption for concealed carry holders. The House bill did not have that exemption. The Senate Judiciary Committee, did they put that exemption back in the House bill today?
Yeah, they conformed the House bill to the Senate bill that came out of there, which did have an exemption for concealed handgun permit holders. So again, you'll have this conflict between the House and the Senate on one handgun a month, and I'm not exactly sure how you work out a compromise on that, unless one body gives in to the other.
Right.
And says, all right, we'll just leave permit holders in, or all right, we won't do permit holders, depending on which body caves to the other. If that doesn't happen, I don't know what it's either an on or an off. You either allow permit holders to be exempt or you don't. I don't know what the compromise could possibly be between those two.
Yeah, and you're right. You wonder how much horse trading is going to be done behind closed doors, because this conference committee, this is not a public hearing, right? And so
right.
My concern is that, you might have House and Senate Democrats get together and say, all right, well, listen, we'll leave that exemption in on 1 gun a month, but you senators, you're going to cave on, local control or, the preemption measure that we'll see a lot of these. Well, we actually won't see a lot of these deals being done, but they'll emerge from this closed door session and say, all right, look, here are the deals that we've struck.
Yeah, and it's up or down, and all we can do at that point is watch online to see what the floor does on each body with these changes as they come out. The one that allows localities to do their own gun control, that one was changed. Again, I think pressure that we've been putting on as gun owners, again, has had a big influence on this. It didn't kill the bill, but they did take out the broad wording that the House had that would allow a locality even ban open and concealed carry if they wanted to completely. That they got rid of all that, and you're kind of back to what the Senate had, where they can only ban guns in certain places, like in their government buildings and parks, and on streets adjoining a permitted event and at the permitted event. That's still a lot of areas where they can ban guns,
yeah.
But it was not as sweeping as the House version. However, they added a few more goodies in there, and I haven't had a chance to break those down, but they added another couple areas where they could ban guns at the local level. Now, what I will say here is all the hard work that we've as a community of gun owners have done to get these sanctuary localities passed.
Mm-hmm.
This is where that will begin to pay off, because if this bill goes into into law, we will then do a big push across the county. Across the state. We're now already gearing up as to how we're going to do this. to basically get localities to say, yep, we can pass laws and ordinances that affect guns, but we're not going to do it. We're a sanctuary. And if that's the case, then the vast majority of the state isn't going to do anything with this. It's a paper tiger. Where it won't be a paper tiger is places like Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun, and Albemarle, and some of the localities that have refused to come on as sanctuaries, like Norfolk and places like that. There we could expect that there probably will be gun control and bans. To what extent we don't know, but that's where gun owners are really going to need to stand up and push back, especially in places like Fairfax and, the 4 big counties.
Yeah.
They're going to need to go back there and push hard, so that they don't make any changes. So we'll have to make them fight for any change they are going to they plan on doing at the county and city level.
Absolutely. And as you say, I mean, we're building this network there at the county and local level. And hopefully this, I don't think that the Second Amendment sanctuary movement is dying down. And I expect that when we see some of these bad bills become bad laws, you're going to see that movement reignite as we once again call on our supervisors, call on our city council members to take a stand and support our right to keep and bear arms. And, of course, our county sheriffs as well. I want to ask you, Phil, we heard last week, I think it was Senator Bill Stanley had offered an amendment to the budget that would have given sheriffs and deputies a 3%, basically a cost of living raise. It was killed by Senate Democrats, and Senator Stanley says Dick Saslaw, the Senate Majority Leader, came up to him afterwards and said, why we did this, don't you? It's because the sheriffs are coming up here and testifying in committee that they're going to oppose our bills. And Senator Stanley says he asked the senator what bills, and he said, well, the gun control bills. I've seen Sheriff Scott Jenkins from Culpeper County and a couple other sheriffs speak out, but talk to me if you can about the politics that these anti-gun politicians are playing here with public safety, whether it's killing Chap Peterson's bill that would have allowed part-time law enforcement to purchase their service weapons when they retire. That's a bill that passed unanimously out of the state Senate, killed by House Democrats in a committee because Chap Peterson voted against this gun ban from Ralph Northam. Then you got this attempt to go after sheriffs and hit them in their pocketbooks. Is that, in your opinion, is that going to force compliance, or is that going to get the backs up of these sheriffs and these pro-Second Amendment law enforcement officers?
Well, let me add something to that. Apparently there's a bill. Now, I haven't seen the bill number yet. I haven't seen the bill. I just heard about this elsewhere. And it's apparently it's a bill to be introduced next year in 2021 that will knock back 80% of the retirement benefits for sheriffs, deputies, and all that, if they're not going to be enforcing these laws. So they're not only are they just knock back a raise, but they're going to hit them when they retire. So I'm waiting for that bill to hit, and I'm just waiting because I'm already ready to fire off a volley on that one. These brave men and women that are the sheriffs in the state of Virginia that put their lives on the line for us every single day. I don't think they're going to be cowed by this stuff. I don't think they're going to run and hide. I think, they're not going to be intimidated. If the Democrats want to play that game, I think it's going to come back and bite them in the rear end really, really bad. And I'll be sure to do my part to help make sure that happens.
Absolutely.
This petty politics, the Democrats are really good at playing that game. And they're very much like that. They're like a bunch of petulant children, you make them mad. And, oh boy, now they're going to find every way they can to get even with you. It's not, there's no high level thinking going on here. This is playground stuff. And Saslaw is the king of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's a really good way of putting it. Playground mentality that we're seeing from some of these lawmakers. One last question. You talked before about the efforts of gun owners in the state of Virginia, and obviously we've seen this since even before the session began. The outcry and the opposition to these gun control bills. Do you truly believe that that gun owners are making a difference, that we are forcing some of these lawmakers to take a second look at legislation to try to water it down, to quell the unrest and the opposition?
Yes, absolutely. The Democrats had no reason to compromise on anything. They had complete control of everything. It could not be stopped. Every Republican could vote correctly with us every time, and everything would pass if the Democrats won. They had no internal need to water anything down. And the House, the House is pretty much running in that mode. Oh, we're just going to really pour it on.
Mm-hmm.
But the Senate is not running in that mode, and they have been strongly influenced, I believe, by citizens. This is the way government's supposed to work. They're being petitioned by citizens to properly represent them. So they've weakened these bills where they wouldn't have been weakened if we hadn't been standing up. They would have just tried to shove it all through. The Republicans couldn't stop it. So, and by the way, Senator Obenchain and Senator McDougal, two Republicans, did a yeoman's job today in pushing back on all these bills. They really did. Obenchain really laid it out on the line. He said that a lot of people up here on this committee are looking down on like the people in this room, the concealed carry permit holders and so forth, and that they absolutely should not be doing that. And they should not be treating them with such disdain. And so, he stood up and said that. And the room kind of broke into cheers, but anyhow.
Well, I'm glad to hear that there are those voices still there in Richmond. And, hopefully come next year, we're going to be able to send many more of those pro-Second Amendment voices to serve in the legislature, because, that's going to be the next chance we get the opportunity to set things right here in the state of Virginia. Phil Van Cleave, listen, I appreciate you so much for coming on the program, all the work that you're doing, and I hope we can talk again very soon, sir. Now, one more legislative item before we get to today's Armed Citizen story, our a good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. Washington State, Tuesday morning in Olympia, there is going to be a hearing on a gun ban bill. Actually, I'm sorry, a magazine ban bill. Now, this magazine ban that had been introduced in Washington State, it failed to cross over out of the House of Origin. So it was a House bill, did not pass over to the Senate by the deadline. But now you've got an anti-gun lawmaker that is trying to play some games with this and has reintroduced this language in a brand new bill. The bill is ostensibly dealing with the state's tax code, and so it would repeal a couple of tax breaks, but it would also introduce a compensated confiscation scheme, a quote-unquote buyback of any legally owned magazines that can hold more than 15 rounds of ammunition. This is coming up in the House Finance Committee in Olympia on Tuesday morning. Gun owners, you need to make sure, if you're a Washington State gun owner, that you're contacting your state representative. If you can get there to Olympia, do so. Now, I will say there's hope that this can be defeated. The original sponsor of that magazine ban in Washington State, the one that failed to cross over, he says he's not supporting this. Mike Chapman is the state representative. He said, quote, "I can't support this process." He said the bill did not pass by the deadline, and, quote, "now to tie it to tax policy doesn't feel right." He said the public should know this is not right. He said if we open the door and say policy bills can live on, then in essence, our deadlines mean nothing. He also said that the magazine ban drew about 2,000 comments to his office on both sides of the issue. I'm guessing one side chimed in more than the other, and I'm guessing those opposed chimed in more than supporters of this magazine ban. But he said, quote, "This is patently unfair." He said, "How are they going to have time to plan to come to Olympia?" Meaning those who weighed in on one side or the other of these bills. He says he had responded to several hundred of these emails saying that, and telling folks that he planned to bring this bill back next session. He said, quote, "Now I'm a liar." Adding that he had not known that the new bill would be introduced. He said, "I apologize to those who got that email." So the sponsor of the bill is not on board with this. There's another representative who's also a co-sponsor of the magazine ban, Representative Steve Theringer, who says that he too is not supportive of this attempt, this backdoor attempt to confiscate lawfully owned magazines. So, again, we can defeat this in this House Finance Committee, and even some gun control advocates are not on board with the actions of this lawmaker to try to ram through this measure. Representative Javier Valdez, this is the sponsor of the new magazine ban. It's House Bill 2947. And again, it's got to be heard Tuesday morning in the House Finance Committee there in Washington State. All right, now let's get to our good deed of the day, our armed citizen story, and our recidivist report. New York State, where a man has been charged in a Taco Bell robbery, and actually was arrested twice in one night after he was arrested for that Taco Bell robbery. Yeah, we're once again talking about the bail reform laws in New York State. 34-year-old Paul Rostick III in Waterlivet, New York, charged now with trespassing back on February the 19th. He's accused of screaming and pushing patrons at the Black Bear Inn bar and restaurant in the city of Waterlivet. He was forcibly removed and arrested. He was then released on an appearance ticket. He was arrested hours later, police say, after he returned to the same restaurant, this time armed with a baseball bat. Yeah. According to police, he then harassed the staff, other patrons. He's accused of spitting on officers, kicking partitions while officers attempted to process him in a booking area. He's also accused of threatening to kill an on-duty officer, according to police. So he was charged additionally with trespass, criminal possession of a weapon, and harassment. And police say that he was then released under supervision of probation. Police say he was also sentenced to probation after an incident back in December at a business, and he was released under bail reform laws, accused of a strong-armed robbery at a Taco Bell in Latham, New York, charged with robbery, criminal mischief, and petty larceny. So all of these incidents, robbery, assault, time and time again, over a matter of weeks, Paul Rostick is getting arrested, and then he's getting put right back out on the street because even though he might pose a threat to the community, under New York State's bail reform laws, he's not going to be held while he awaits trial. So he'll be back out, commit more crimes, get arrested, be back out, commit more crimes, get arrested, be put back out. Yeah, and the revolving door of justice is spinning so fast in Mr. Rostick's case that it resembles more of a fan than an actual doorway. Our armed citizen story of the day from Allouez, Wisconsin. I believe that I'm pronouncing that correctly, although I could be wrong. There's a town in Oklahoma where I grew up called, it looks like it should be Miami, but it's pronounced Miami. And there's also Prague, Oklahoma, as opposed to Prague. So it could be Allouez, Wisconsin. I don't know, but I think it's Allouez, Wisconsin, where a man tried to commit a robbery, picked the wrong target, apparently, brought a knife to a gunfight. According to the Green Bay Gazette, they say the Brown County Sheriff's Office reports that a man was plowing snow around noon on Saturday when another guy came up to him and asked him for money. The guy plowing snow said no, and that's when the man pulled out an 8-inch kitchen knife and demanded money, which is when the would-be victim pulled out his gun and the suspect ran away. The will-be victim in this case is a concealed carry holder. He called 911. According to the sheriff's office, deputies attempted to track the man using a police dog but couldn't find him. I think they might be able to track him in the snow. But anyway, not much information. The suspect, clean-shaven black man between the ages of 35 and 40, wearing a Chicago Bears winter hat, black hoodie, blue jeans, tan work boots that look new. But thankfully, the good news is that concealed carry holder there in Allouez, Wisconsin, was able to prevent himself from being stabbed, prevent himself from being robbed, thanks to the fact that he had his legally carried firearm with him. And finally, our good deed of the day from Seabrook, New Hampshire, where a police officer helped out a veteran not long ago when he was facing a crisis. Officer John Giarusso says it was freezing. It was 4 or 6 degrees out that day. And he got a call a couple weeks ago to check on a man living there in Seabrook, 95-year-old World War II veteran. And when Officer Giarrusso got there, he discovered that the heating system in the veteran's home had failed the night before. Temperature was already below 30 degrees when they got to that gentleman's home. Giarrusso said it was very cold that morning. He said he was without heat. He was asking for some help. We went to check on him. He was freezing in his own home, all bundled up. They tried to get the heat fixed that day, but they could not do so. So instead, police brought the veteran to a nearby Dunkin' for food and hot coffee. They put him up in a local hotel for the night. Officer Giarrusso says the police union paid for the hotel room. Our treasurer called, set that up right away. And Officer Giarrusso says it was the least that they could do for someone who risked his life for this country. He said, quote, greatest generation World War II vets. He said, you hear that phrase a lot, and you don't have a lot of opportunities to meet those guys and talk with them. You don't, unfortunately. Those individuals, many of them, have now passed away. My dad was a World War II vet, passed away just before he turned 92. And I can tell you, if you do have an opportunity to spend some time with any of these men and women who are part of the greatest generation, who served this nation in its most dark and desperate days, do so. And Officer Giarrusso and all of the officers there in Seaburg, New Hampshire, who helped ensure that this 95-year-old veteran got to spend a night in a warm room with a warm bed instead of freezing in his home, we thank you for your very, very good deed. That is about all the time we have for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program today. We will have much more on the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation coming up on tomorrow's program. Another reminder, we've got a red flag bill that's before the governor's desk in New Mexico. So if you're a New Mexico gun owner, I don't know that you're going to be able to sway her. She's been very supportive of this measure, unfortunately, but call the governor. She needs to hear from gun owners. She needs to know how widespread the opposition is. Be polite, be civil, but be firm in your opposition to that red flag bill. Have a great rest of your Monday. We'll see you back here tomorrow with another brand new edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. We'll see you then.